Being asexual is kind of like living in a world where everyone suddenly bursts into song as if they're in a musical. And then I'm the only person who doesn't get involved in the musical acts and has no idea what's going on. This is a quote from an asexual blogger called Anignori, and this is the best quote I've ever found to describe what it's like growing up as an asexual in a world that idealizes sex. Asexuality, as defined by the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, is a sexual orientation in which a person experiences no sexual attraction at all. Like other LGBT groups, asexuality is a marginalized orientation that needs acceptance and support from other people. Because asexuality is considered an invisible orientation, many people who are asexual grow up not knowing who they are, and that leads to poor mental health because they think that they're broken, that there's something wrong with them, that they can't form this basic human connection that everyone else around them can. I'm one of those people. When I was in high school and even starting out in college, I often cried myself to sleep at night because I was so terrified of what was going to happen to me in the future. Because was I going to end up alone for the rest of my life? Because how could I make that kind of connection that even my younger sister could make with ease? When I found out about asexuality and I learned that there are people like me in the world, the relief I felt was indescribable. This is why asexuality needs more visibility and there needs to be more support for it in the mainstream public. So that way there are less people who grow up thinking that there's something wrong with them. Asexual people are often marginalized in ways that are not often immediate or obvious to other people. Asexuals, according to a 2010 study in Demographic Research magazine, make up about 1% of the population. Our invisibility is said to be partially due to our small numbers, but it's also due to other factors that are enforced upon us. One of the ways asexual people frequently experience discrimination is in the form of microaggressions. Now, a microaggression is a way to belittle a person about something that is their identity without making it seem like an insult or belittling. Many asexual people often describe being given comments like, well, how do you know when you've never tried it? Or, oh, so you're going to reproduce through mitosis. Or the best one that I've heard so far is, asexuals, right, you mean old people and handicapped people. As you can see, this is somewhat demoralizing to hear that this is what people think of when they hear something that you identify with. And even though if that might not seem like a big deal, it can turn into a huge problem. One of the most insidious threats that asexual people face is something that's called corrective rape. Corrective rape is the idea that someone who is a non-typical orientation can be fixed through forced to have A person who is in a non-typical sexual orientation can be fixed by being forced to have sex with someone of a more typical orientation, like heterosexuality. This is not an occurrence that's unique to asexuals, but we are often silenced when we try to talk about it. Even among the LGBT community, asexual people aren't accepted. We're seen as people who are either special snowflakes just trying to get attention, or we're seen as derailing the LGBT movement for something we don't need. The Huffington Post recently did an article in 2013 specifically talking about asexuality and corrective rape. And a woman came out to one of her close friends as asexual. Later that night, he tried to assault her. Another blogger has frequently talked about how there's this great fear among asexual people that one day we're going to come out to someone and that person is going to take that as a challenge. Even if we don't go that far, there's still a lot of discrimination against us. A 2010 survey on discrimination proved that of all the type of sexual orientations, asexual people are the most avoided. They're the least likely to be hired or rented out if they are out as asexual. The best way to battle against this kind of discrimination is to speak up. If we spread more education, it becomes harder for those types of microaggressions to happen, which means that it's harder for those kinds of attacks to be accepted and ignored. One of the best ways to get information is to go to Asexual Visibility and Education Network, or asexuality.org. This site holds a lot of resources for people not only trying to come out as asexual, but also for their friends and family who might be curious or not confused about their loved one's new identity. I wish I could tell you that there is also a support group that you could go to and listen out of meetings so you could hear asexual people's voices for themselves. Unfortunately, there's not one in Alaska. However, the UAF GSA has in the past shown some support for asexuality, so that is an avenue you could go to for more information. With this information, you can then use it to combat the types of discrimination you see in the media and with other people. You can combat against the microaggressions and nip it in the bud. Now, 1% of the population is a small number, but imagine if the 73 million people, because that's 1% of the entire world's population, grew up understanding who they were. With more education and representation of asexuality visible, there would be fewer kids who grow up the way that I did. And then they would be able to form better and more understanding relationships with other people. And we could break the stigma surrounding asexuality for good. I had to grow up feeling like I was broken. If I can spare one child from that pain, this speech will have been a success. Even as information about asexuality is spreading, there is still a lot of misinformation and we still need our voice. So when you speak up for asexuality, keep in mind that even though if I'm the only person you know of who's asexual, the second person could be your spouse, your partner, your child. So when you speak up for me, you're speaking up for someone you love. Thank you.